being recorded.
All right, good morning, everybody. Like Adrian said, my name is Tom Weiser. I'm the Regional Construction Engineer down in Region 9, Binghamton. Just so I've got an idea of the balance in the crowd here, can you tell me how many people have been an inspector for less than 5 years? All right. How many people less than 2? All right, great. And then how many consultants do we have in here versus DOT? Okay, great. Thanks for that. So like I said, I'm Tom Weiser. I'm the Regional Construction Engineer. Like Adrian said, I normally, when I do presentations like this, I like a lot of interaction with the crowd, but because we're trying to record this, it's going to get probably a little dry because you're going to just listen to me talk, which makes for a long morning for you. But if you have questions, I really would love to hit those after I'm done going through the presentation. So if you write down the slide number that the question was on, we can go back there. It might be able to trigger what you were thinking and why you wanted to ask it. You're going to hear a couple things from me probably throughout this thing, and you're going to be like, Tom, will you really stop saying that? And one of them is an active participant. The best inspectors out there are active participants. And by an active participant, what I mean is you're actively involved with the job. You're not sitting in your car. You're not playing games on your phone. You're not hanging out. You're looking ahead. You're trying to be in front of the contractor. That's what I try to stress to all the inspectors is I want you to be in front of the contractor. I want you looking at your plans, looking ahead of time, and knowing what they're going to do and asking those questions so that you're prepared as an inspector to know the items you're going to be covering, the things that they're going to be doing, and the materials that are going to be coming in, so you make sure that we're getting the right samples and everything like that. So active participation that's a huge thing for you. And the other one is communication. This thing right here, every single one of us have at least one. Some of us, like me, are carrying 2 because you've got a work one and a personal one. But this thing is the worst thing in the world for communication because it's gotten us away from having the eye-to-eye, face-to-face talking. I'm either sending you an email, I'm sending you a text message. We're not even picking up the phone and making phone calls anymore. Everybody's trying to get away from that face-to-face personal communication. And I'm going to tell you that as an inspector, you need to have that communication, if not hourly, at least a couple of times a day with your foreman that you're working with. And if you don't start that early, you're going to go down a path that it's really hard to turn the boat around. You get down there where you're not communicating, communication starts falling off, then you start getting into that tense conversations, and it's really hard to turn that around. So if you start having those conversations, and they're going to be difficult, that's one of the things about being an inspector is we have to have the difficult conversations. If we're just standing back and letting somebody go forward and making decisions and going down a path that we know is not right, we're not being fair to the project. We're not being fair to them or ourselves because now you're making somebody else's job harder above you. So if you see something, you need to communicate with your foreman and have that conversation of, hey, why are you doing it this way? And that's where I'm saying communication is key. And if you're not sure about something, you have to communicate up the chain. So that's just a couple of background things about me, my expectations for my inspectors that work in Region 9. And I'm sure I don't know what regions everybody works in, but I'm sure that I know most of the regional construction engineers very well, although a bunch are retiring now, so it's making it a little harder. But they all have very similar expectations. So like I said, we're going to kind of go through this thing. I'm not a huge reader, so I'm not going to read every slide. I'm going to just kind of look at it. I'll hit some high points for you. And like I said, if you see something, write down the slide number and we can go through there. So as you all know, not only do we represent New York State DOT, we represent the state of New York. We're out there, we're the eyes and the ears of, let's see if I can get this thing to work right. There you go. So we're representing not only the department, but the people of New York State. We're trying to make sure that our contractors are giving the public what they're paying for. The contractors bid projects, they have plans. We want to make sure that the project is built in a safe and efficient manner. Schedules are important. and quality is important. So guiding principles, we serve the people of New York. We all have customers, whether it's going to be the contractor, whether it's going to be material suppliers, and that's where that communication comes through. We have a chain of command. Chain of command is very important for an inspector and for our projects to make sure that the people above you know what's happening in your operations so that the decisions can be consistent within your project. And then within your project, then you have your EIC, and your EIC has an area supervisor, and then there's a construction engineer. So that chain of command is really critical on our projects so that we try to keep things uniform and consistent. That bottom one there goes back to that, the clarity of the expectations and feedback. We want to make sure that we're giving the contractors feedback, but we also need feedback. Your EIC needs feedback from you. If you're not getting good direction from your EIC, or you're not sure what their expectations are on a certain operations, you need to have that conversation with your EIC or chief inspector, depending on the size of the project that you're working on, so that they know that, hey, you're a little fuzzy on this part. There's a lot of gray in our spec book. It's not always crystal clear, black and white, and we have to work through situations. The plans don't show everything perfect, and we have to work through some issues and some things that come up on projects. So we've got integrity. That's one of the most important things for us, is we want to be able to every day at the end of the day know that we did our best to keep this project on schedule, keep it safe, and keep the quality going forward. Your integrity is everything. If you tell somebody you're going to do something, that's how you're going to build a great rapport with your foreman. Is you tell them you're going to do something, you follow through and do it. Customer service, we've already talked about. Partnership. You're going to find out as you go through your career that you're going to start running into foremen on different jobs, and they move from company to company depending on where the work is. And all of a sudden you may have been working with them on company A, and 4 years down the road, they're working for company B on a different job, and you're going to know their things. But you'll start to realize that, I can talk to this person, I can ask them questions, we can have some good feedback, and you'll know the others that, this one doesn't give me any feedback, or they're always walking right down that fine line of right across the edge, so I've got to be more interactive with that person. Teamwork, on your projects, you're going to have inspectors of varied experience, people that have been doing different things. You can go from being on highway work and doing, drainage for 5 years, and then all of a sudden you're on a bridge job and you're standing out there going, this is my first bridge job. I've never driven piles before. What am I supposed to be doing? So you start asking the other staff that's on the job, talking to them. So that's that teamwork part. People, it says, we respect others. At times you'll see that contractors are walking the line, or walking across the line. They're trying to push the limits. We have to remember that everybody has a job out there, and they're getting pushed in a different direction than you are, and that's why we have a job. We have a job to keep contractors from going too far over that line and not giving us the quality that we want. We want our contractors to make money, because the more contractors that are making money, if they're making profit, they're going to stay in business. And when we have contractors making a profit, that means that they can bid more work, and then we keep our projects at a better price. If you get down to where you're getting either single bidders or only 2 bidders, now you're going to start to see our prices go up higher, because they know the competition for the projects is down. So we want to work with our contractors, but we can't just open the checkbook and let them run. We have to keep on pulling them back in and get them online. So we're going to talk about the role of an inspector. The role in the department, we covered that a little bit. You got your role in the field, a typical day, how to interact with public, how to address the media inquiries, how to work with a contractor, available resources, and electronic resources. So your role in the department, you know, you're the on-site eyes. You're the person that's going to be at that operation every day, depending on if you're a single location, multiple location project. You may see your EIC twice a day. You may see them once a day. You might see them once every other day. You know, we've got culvert projects where there's 5 different locations going on. You know, that EIC is bouncing around to those projects. I don't know about all regions. I know in Region 9, we assign cell phones to all our inspectors so that they have an ability to get a hold of their EIC if something does come up. Inspect, verify, and document daily operations. You know, that's that being proactive, being an interactive person on the project. You know, you're not just standing there watching them do something. You're making sure that it's being done correctly. I mean, I can hire a 14-year-old kid and tell them, stand out here, and at the end of the day, tell me what they did. That's not an inspector. An inspector is being active on the project, interacting. You're documenting what's happened. You're making sure that they're following the specs, they're following the plans, you're asking those questions. And then safety. I mean, safety on our projects, there's a lot of moving parts. You know, you've got equipment, you've got public driving by us. You know, you're that person, depending on your projects. Some projects have inspectors covering both work zone traffic control and their operations. Some have them just covering their operation. So just talk to your EIC. What is your EIC's expectation when it comes to, and it's mainly that work zone traffic part. You know, do they have one person that's watching work zone traffic overall, and then you're just watching the safety of your project? But the big thing is, if you see something, you need to step up and say it right now, even if it's not your operation. I can't tell you the number of times that you'll be walking down a site and it might not be your operation, and you'll see them doing something, working in a trench that's not protected with shoring, working too close to high power lines. You know, watch where they're standing. If you're working on an operation on a road where you've got a lane closure and you got live traffic right next to you, you know, which way are they facing? Are they keeping their backs? Do they need to be standing right there? If you see something that you feel is imminent danger, you have a responsibility to stop that operation. There's not a EIC out there. There's not a construction supervisor out there. There's not a construction engineer out there, all the way up to the top, that's going to be upset with you for stopping an operation that you felt there was imminent danger where somebody could get seriously hurt, and it turns out that everything was okay. I would rather err on the side of caution when it comes to safety and make sure that we're stopping them if we see something. And it's the little things. I mean, we talk about the high vis apparel and the hard hats and that. That's where it starts, and that's how your crews will understand, where are you on the safety? You know, where are you? How much are you into this? Are you going to let them get out of their trucks and walk around without a vest on? Do you let the foreman jump out without his hard hat on? You know, or are you sending them back? That's the stuff you do early on in the project that tell them, I'm serious about this. This is important to me. I want you to follow these rules. It's the rules for everybody. I mean, I make a point of it. I'm the construction engineer. I wear my steel toe boots every day, and then I'm out in the field. I get out of my truck. I have my vest on. I have my hard hat on. It doesn't matter if I'm out of my truck for 2 minutes or 2 hours, because I'm leading by example to this, because everybody sees you, and it's the same thing for yourself as an inspector. If you're jumping out and running around, not putting your hard hat on or not having your vest on, you know, that the staff that's working for the contractor is looking and saying, oh, I guess it doesn't mean that much on this job. You know, and you're going to hear from the guys, the men and women, especially on the rural projects. Oh, we're out. Nobody's around. Nobody's going to see anything. Why do I need to wear this vest? You know, we're in a closed lane, but you really need to be, you need to take a proactive role with that. Why are you so important? You know, you're recording and documenting what the contractor did, what you did, payments. I will tell you, until you've been there, you think you're doing a great job. But when you get called to court, or you're 6 months later and you're going through and trying to find out quantities, you don't realize how little you've written in your DWR. You can't write too much. You can't document too much. You know, especially when it comes to, as an inspector, the documenting of quantities and things that happened in the conversations you had with your foreman. Because what will happen is it's going to be 2, 3, a month later, 2, 3 weeks later, a month later, and all of a sudden something else is going to pop up on the job, and they're going to say, well, over here we did this or we did that, and you guys let us do it that way over here. And then we start going back through DWRs and we try to reconstruct it, or somebody got hurt and we try to reconstruct what was happening, who was there, and we don't have enough detail. So write those details. Your quantities are critical. Try to have a conversation, depending on the operation that you're covering, with your foreman at the end of every day. Have a conversation with them. Hey, this is what I'm going to be paying for. Most contractors are evolving. They're getting a little bit more proactive with the quantity thing. So they're requiring their foreman to track quantities also. So just verify that you have the same quantity that you're paying for the day, because it's easier at that point than either 2 weeks down the road or a month down the road when we're going to run the estimate, and we send a sample over to the contractor for the contractor to verify before we run the payment, and they come back with a list of quantities that we're different at. Show detail. Make sure that if you write down, if something's wrong, we want you to write down that it was wrong. And then we also want you to follow up with, what did you do? What did the contractor do to correct it, to make it correct? Okay. Don't ever write down something that you can't support and testify that it was done correctly, because you may get called into court. Somebody gets hurt, something happens like that, you could be in court, and you don't want to have something written on a piece of paper that you can't confirm that was correct. You know, my father always said the easiest thing to keep track of is the truth. It's never hard to remember what the truth was, because you know what you saw, you know what you did. It's when you start spinning it and making it a little soft that you forget some of the details that you put in there. That just hit a little bit on that, on the ethics. You know, perception matters. You know, we represent the Department of Transportation. You know, what people see, how we interact, how we talk, that all matters, and it comes down to how credible people feel you are. You know, if you're showing that you're an active participant, you're involved, they're going to give you a lot more credibility. If you're standing over in the corner all the time, head down, playing on your phone, sitting in your car, taking a nap, leaning up against the guide rail, sitting on the guide rail, you know, people drive by, they see that, well, why do we have these people out here? They're not doing anything. So make sure that you're doing that stuff. You know, the last two on the bottom, accepting gratuities. You know, I mean, that's crystal clear. You don't ever want to put yourself in a position where somebody could come back and say, oh, well, I gave them, you know, tickets to the Mets game or whatever, you know, and have that come up, because that is things that people remember. They feel that they did something for you. They're going to call it back out. And, you know, you just don't want to ever put yourself in that position. You know, there's the buddy with the contractor. There's a difference between being professional and respective and being buddy. I don't have any problem with going out, having a beer, sitting down, having a cup of coffee, having a conversation. But when you start going over that line where you're spending every night or every weekend going out and doing that stuff, you got to make sure that you can still be able to make the decision that you need to for the best of that project, and not have that get a little bit gray on you where, oh, I don't want to say that, you know, we're friends, we've done whatever. So that's just a quote from Dwight Eisenhower. So, you know, that says a lot about the stuff we're talking about, is making sure that you, at the end of the day, are happy with the decisions you made and the effort that you put forward out on that project. So we roll in the field. We talked about you're part of the team. Don't think that you're out on an island, even when you're out on a project and you're the only person for the DOT. You have the ability to communicate with your EIC. You will start to, the more you work in a region, you'll start to make friends with other inspectors, other EICs, use them as a resource. You'll get to know the people in your regional geotech group, people in your regional materials group, use those resources. I say you're not out there on an island, but at times you feel like you're all alone and you've got to make all these decisions by yourself. But don't ever be forced to feel like you have to make a decision if you don't have all the information and are confident in that decision. Reach out to other people, ask for it. Your actions directly impact the success or failure of a project. That's probably the most important thing that you have to realize, is that we're all pieces of the puzzle. And if we're not doing our part, the project's not going to get done on time, on budget, and with the quality we want. Because if you stand back and you let a contractor pave for half a day and you know that they're not doing it right, either the depth is too much, the slope's incorrect, the temperatures have been incorrect, and then your report goes in or your EIC stops out and sees that you've been letting something go wrong. Now they've got to stop the operation. And then now we have to make a decision. What are we going to do with this last hour, 2, 3 hours worth of work? And when we start making contractors have to take work out for long periods of time, that starts impacting money, because now they have got, it impacts the money, it impacts the project schedule because we're doing things. And now we start losing credibility. It's like, well, your inspector was standing right there. If there was a problem with this, why didn't they say it? So that's an important thing. You have a very important role in the project. And I know at times you think, oh, I'm just the inspector on this one operation, but it takes all of them working together to get the project done. Be professional, watch the way you dress. I'm not saying that we're not going to go back to the late 40s and 50s where all the engineers and inspectors were wearing ties out there, but be professional. If people drive by, they see you, we want to look professional. We don't want ripped off sleeves, we want us to look professional. We want people to know that you're representing the Department of Transportation. Is your hard hat faded and look like it's, 2 shades lighter than it should be? Is your vest all covered? And, we want to look professional. We want people to know that we're representing the Department of Transportation. So make sure that you act professional and you look professional. Your own operation. Depending on the project, I'm not sure how all EICs work. Some EICs will put you on an operation. You're going to be on that operation for multiple days. They'll tell you, hey, tomorrow or later in the week, you're going to start covering whatever operation. Take that time when you get that to start going through the plans. Make sure that you know what you're covering. That one where we talk about, are there material requirements? Know the material that's supposed to be coming, whether it's concrete or asphalt. Know what you're supposed to be looking for on the ticket to make sure that you're getting the right material. If it's a silt fence or a bedding material, know what type it's supposed to be. Bring a copy of the approved list with you so that when that material shows up, okay, it's this brand, it's on the approved list, it's good for this item. That's all the stuff that you're going to help down the road keeping that project on schedule, because you're asking that question before they start putting stuff in that gets covered up, that now we've got to figure out how we're going to handle that situation. Are you going to be working for a subcontractor? One of the big things with subcontractors, there's this thing called the CUF, commercial useful function. You're going to need to be documenting that the subcontractor is doing their own work, that they have their own equipment. That's all important stuff for you to be putting in your DWR for a subcontractor, because there's a whole thing out there with subcontractor fraud and DBE and WMBE fraud, and that's going on. And we want to document that the subcontractor came in, they have their own labor force, they have their own equipment, and they're performing their own work. So there's a little thing that you may not ever even get involved with. Somebody else is going to deal with it, but because you documented it clearly and concisely in your DWR, it makes it easy for your office engineer or your EIC to be able to go in. There's a form that they have to fill out that they can go in and fill out that form and say, yep, that was done and everything's good. Sampling testing requirements, especially for your concretes, know what your time limits are. How long do they have from when the mix was batched? How long from when they got on site? When they started discharge? What's your maximum slump here? We have to take an active role with that because a lot of our projects have federal money in them, or probably most of them have federal money on them. And if we have a federal audit, they come in, they will start pulling tickets and they will start looking at an operation. And if all of a sudden we were accepting concrete that was either out of spec with air slump or time, the feds can say, well, we're not paying for that material. We're not paying for anything that was incorporated in that material. So that could cause a big impact on the finances of the state and also on your project, because then we have to figure out what kind of testing do we have to do after the fact to prove that the material meets the spec or the engineering properties that we need it to meet. So that's a really, really critical one, is understanding those things. You're watching drainage or an MSES wall or a grass wall be installed. How often do I need to have compaction tests done? Who's supposed to be doing the compaction tests? Who's doing the gradations? Making sure that stuff is done, asking those questions and working with your EIC. So your typical day, there's no such thing as a typical day. And that's one of the best things about being an inspector, is every day is different. You're not doing the same thing. We're not punching out widgets at some factory where we're just grinding away every day. Every day you're doing something different. You're seeing something different. Hopefully you're learning something every day. Some of these things, arriving to work, ready to work, on time, early. Some people struggle with that, but on time is critical. My world, 15 minutes early is late. So, we like people on time, ready to go to work. If you're having problems, this goes back to the communication thing. We all have lives after DOT and after work, right? If you've got something going on at home, something going on with your family, your parents, whatever, communicate that with your EIC. So they're not just sitting there stewing because you're showing up 10 or 15 minutes late, and they didn't know that, your wife got sent out of town, so you're trying to get the kids onto the bus or whatever that is going. If you have that conversation, that communication with your EIC, that will help with some of those things. Maybe they can work with you on some things we can't. Sometimes they can say, yeah, why don't you, instead of coming in at 7, you come in at 7:30, you can cover the later shift. I'll have somebody coming in. It depends on the project, but have that communication. Make sure you have your PPE. I talked about that a little bit earlier. You're setting the example for everybody on the job. You're wandering around in flip-flops and shorts, you're sending a message. Testing equipment, the operations, make sure that you've got that it's ready. Specs. On the bottom one, something isn't right, speak up. That is the hardest part of your job, is you're going to be, as a new inspector, going up to some person that could have been doing this for 15 or 20 years and telling them that you're doing that wrong. You don't have to get in their face. You don't have to yell at them. You don't have to scream. Start out by asking them some questions. Why are you doing it this way? They give you an answer. Well, the spec says that we're supposed to be doing it this way. Why? I don't understand why you're doing that way. Have those conversations. Try to get them to see your perspective. And there's things in the spec that you may not understand. Why do they have to do something like that? Ask somebody. Ask your EIC. Hey, why does it say we have to do it this way? It doesn't make any sense. I was talking to my foreman. They want to do it this way. I don't see a big problem with it. That's some of the gray that's in the specs that we can allow them to be reasonable close conformance. but you have to have that conversation. You can't just stand back and let them do it. And you don't have to get into, I have found that you usually get a lot more by being professional and asking questions than, in my younger day, screaming, yelling, throwing hard hats, kicking dirt and all that. But you don't have to do it that way. You can be professional with them. Sometimes they're not going to be professional back with you. They're going to yell and scream. Just remember that we take the higher road, because as soon as you engage in that opposite behavior, they're being negative to you, so now you go negative back. Now we've lost the higher ground, and we've lost the ability to make some decisions and make some movement on that project. If it gets to an extreme where you have to remove people, if it's, well, these two have been going back and forth fighting with each other, we have a lot less opportunity to remove their person, where if it's just that one, we can work with them and try to get that stuff done. Probably the most important one is the bottom one. Differences and issues. Can they be resolved between you and the foreman? We just talked about that a little bit, but it's just showing that you've got to be that person. You can't kick the can down the road. You're not in a job that you can say, I'm not going to deal with this today, and maybe it'll straighten itself out tomorrow. It never straightens itself out tomorrow. I will tell you, in the 27 years that I've been an inspector, EIC, construction supervisor, construction engineer, I've never found a problem that got better on the next day by not addressing it today. It only gets bigger and bigger. It starts becoming a snowball rolling down a hill, and then it's going to explode at some point, and now we're just dealing with a bunch of problems. So don't let it go. Address it soon. Address it as quickly as you can. So that's important. And if you can't come to resolution, bring in your EIC. If your EIC can't bring it to resolution, they bring in the construction supervisor. When it gets really ugly, the construction engineer and the owner of the company are sitting in some office somewhere talking about the issue. And I have no better feeling when I sit in those meetings and I have DWRs that are clearly written of what we've done, and we've been trying for 3 weeks to get your guys to come over here. That puts me in the best position in the world. I just sit there, I let them vent, tell me how we're wrong, and then I say, all right, now I'm going to tell you my side of the story. And then they said, and when I have it all documented, because you guys did a great job writing your DWRs, I have everything. They don't have it. They have hearsay from so-and-so said this and that. I've got it documented, so you put us in a better role. Think that 2-3 steps down the road, if this ever blows up, did I write enough down here so that the next person above me or two above me can read through it, understand what happened, understood what I did, why I did it, and how we're moving forward. This is one of those things you're going to stumble on. Other than a Dodge Caravan from like the 80s or something like that. But, you walk up on a situation like this, you're obligated to stop that operation. Even if it's not your operation and the other inspector's not there for whatever reason. I mean, they're working in a trench that's not protected. They've got traffic going right along it, equipment. You do not want somebody down in that trench. I will tell you, you never want somebody to die on your project. I've had it. It's awful. You will, for the rest of your life, question the decisions you made, the questions you asked. Did I do enough? Was I out in front of it? I've had it. I hope none of you ever have to go through that. But you don't want, at the end of the day, some guy or gal down there just doing their job, trying to make money to go home so that they can feed their family. And you didn't say something, and then that trench collapses and they don't go home. You never, ever, ever want to spend the rest of your life with that in the back of your mind. Did I do enough? So if you see something, you're obligated. You need to say it because you're the only one. The beauty of our job is we're not worried about making a profit. You're not worried about getting fired because you said something, as a laborer, you said something to the foreman that slowed down the operation. You don't have any of that pressure on you. They're dealing with that. That laborer down in that trench is dealing with that. Do I say something to my foreman? Even though all their rules and their safety book and everything says, yeah, say something. We want you to say something. They'll stand there at their safety meetings, their owners of their companies. We want you to say something. It helps us get better jobs because our workman's comp rate is down. That laborer, that carpenter, that iron worker is sitting there going, if I say something, are they going to fire me? And then I'm not going to get a job. I'm not going to be able to feed my family. You don't have that pressure. You see it, you say it. See them walking out on a steel beam and they're not hooking off. They don't have 2 lanyards. Say something. Get them off there. You don't want that you don't want that in the back of your mind if something goes south. And I'm going to tell you, it doesn't slowly go south. It goes from you're standing there and everything is going great to like that. And it's gone south. And now everybody's standing back, asking questions, and you don't want to be sitting there that night in your bed, staring at the ceiling going, did I do enough? You don't want to go through that. How to deal with the public. Normally, they're not telling you you're doing a great job. Normally, they're not telling you we're thrilled with what you're doing out here. If they're coming, they're usually hot. They're screaming, they're yelling. They didn't get in their driveway. Something is not happening good with them. Be polite. Listen to them. Don't try to tell them they're wrong. That's only going to make them angrier. Do the best you can to kind of bring the situation down. Don't let them be belligerent with you. Don't let them any of that stuff. You know, they can be mad, angry, yelling, screaming, all of that stuff. They start going over that edge, and we all know where that edge is, where they're in your face and they're trying to bump you and everything like that. Turn around, walk away, get a hold of your EIC. But don't try to talk them out of that. Their issue, they're wrong. They don't understand what's going on because they're not going to listen to you. They've forgotten listening well before they got out of their car or screamed and yelled at you. So you're not going to get them past that. Give them information like EIC's number, phone number, all of that so that they could talk to somebody else that maybe it'll give them some time to come down from whatever they were angry about. So yeah, media, don't talk to them. There is no such thing as off the record. They're going to tell you, oh, I just want this little information. Nope, I can't give it to you. Here's my EIC's phone number, name. Let them call you. Let them call the EIC, depending on the region. I think most of the regions are the same now. It all goes to the PIO. There's a person in the regional office that takes care of all media inquiries. They want to make sure that we're giving a consistent message, that things aren't being taken out of context. And that's the stuff that us as inspectors and engineers don't understand, how they can twist questions around, and then the way they ask the question and the way you answered it, they twist it around in the media so it makes it sound like you're saying something different. So just don't answer their questions. There's no such thing as it's off the record. I won't say anything to anybody. How to work with a contractor. I better speed up here. Nothing really new here. Be fair. Fair and consistent. If you're fair and consistent, they can't really ask for much more. Yeah, wait, I'll get through. Be timely with getting back to the contractor with answers, but don't feel pressured. You know, they're going to be all over you. Hey, I got a question about this. I need it now, now, now. If you know the answer, you've dealt with the situation before, you're comfortable with it, give them the answer. If you're not comfortable with it, tell them I'll get you the answer, get to your EIC, get back to them. The bottom one, don't involve yourself in contractors' business decisions, their employee matters. Sometimes it's like a soap opera out there on jobs. You know, so-and-so isn't getting along with so-and-so and whatever. Just let them deal with their stuff. Some of that stuff gets more prevalent when you're getting closer to layoffs, they start getting upset who's getting laid off first, who got brought back early. That's not our issue. Check where you're standing. You know, we don't have to be right next to the active lane. You know, you're walking across there. Do I need to walk across that? What am I accomplishing by the risk I'm putting myself into? You know, if you don't need to be out there standing in the middle of an operation, don't stand in the middle of the operation. You know, they're putting in pipe, they're bringing in material on this side, stand on the other side of the trench. You know, just be aware of where you're standing, what you're doing. Live traffic, don't expect that they actually saw you, because most of them are either texting or on their phone, or they got in a fight with their husband or their wife in the morning and their kid didn't do what they wanted. Treat people the way you want to be treated. Keep your opinions professional. Try to stay out of some of the other stuff that people try to draw you into conversations. We try to stay out of politics, stay out of all that stuff. That's not what we're there to talk about. Inspector writing. So inspector writing, you know, we all know that we need different things that we need to keep in our report. You know, we want it to be clear, concise, correct, complete, and concurrent. You got to keep track of where you were, operations you were covering, crew size, equipment. Make it so that person down the road, or even yourself, somebody comes and asks you a question, hey, what did you do? I can't tell you what I did on Monday, you know, but you want to make sure that you can say, hey, I was on this operation. You can read through, it'll reflect, and it's mainly, you know, months down the road. Most of the time, you're not going back to your DWR to look for something within days, not even a week. It's going to be months down the road. Some question's going to come up. We're going through one. We've got a failure on a bridge deck that we poured, and we're going back. We poured the bridge deck back in August, and it's starting to show some holes, some potholing in the deck. You know, so we're back. We're reading DWRs. We're going through the testing results of that day, looking at the material, looking at the batch plant records and everything like that, trying to figure out, all right, how many guys did they have in front of the machine, behind the machine? How close were they covering? You know, and the more detail you can put on your DWR, the easier it is for us when we have to do that forensic information and try to figure out what happened and why. Because this one already failed. So if there's something that's happened or something that changed, we want to know, because we're doing a lot of bridges throughout the state. So the more information that you can have in those DWRs, the better it is for the people in main office materials, structures, geotech, when we're dealing with something that failed. Yeah, this is pretty basic stuff, you know, temperature, weather, you know, depending on the size of the project, some EICs post that on a wall that they want everybody to be putting the same stuff down. Contractor hours, description, equipment, operation, who, what, where, when, how. Make sure that when you're dealing with crane operators and that you've got the licenses, that you've made a copy of it, that stuff's on record. That's important. Talk about the way they're conveying the material. That's really important on your deck pours. The way the pump is configured and that, to make sure that if we have an issue, they can go back and figure that out. So details are required, sketches. If you do run into a problem on your job where you're requiring them to redo things, make sure that you're talking about that you had them redo this, because a lot of projects now are having CPM schedules, and all of a sudden they start getting into delays, and the contractors will try to pin a delay to a design issue, and we can go back through the DWRs and we can say, well, yeah, there was this design issue that we delayed you from 3 days from doing this operation, but you either didn't have crews here on these 4 days, or you had to redo this for, you know, we had an MSES wall that we had to take down and re-put up. So we've got all that stuff documented. Work zone traffic control, make sure that you're documenting what what was up, that it was in conformance with MUTCD. If there was anything that wasn't in conformance with MUTCD, how you told the contractor to fix it and when it was fixed. Be as detailed as you can on when you notified them of the problem on work zone traffic control and when it was fixed. In case there's ever an accident, we can prove that we are actively inspecting that stuff. We're actively having them do making corrections and putting things up. So that's really important. Says what they did, where they did it, approved materials. Bottom one, it will be used as defense. At some point, your DWR will be read by somebody in court, and throughout your whole career, it will be read. It'll either be an accident court or where we're dealing with a dispute with a contractor. This document. Do others clearly understand my entire notes trouble-free? So if you handed it to somebody else that doesn't know anything about what we're doing, do they understand what was done, why it was done? References. So, contract documents. I don't know how many of you are able to take laptops right out in the field and work off of your laptops through a hotspot. I don't know where all the regions are, but some critical things to remember is make sure you're grabbing the right specs for when your project was let. They're constantly updating the specifications, and especially now that it's an electronic version. So you can't just grab the latest. Make sure you're grabbing the one that was put out for your project that was let. We're dealing with an issue, simple issue right now, main office construction and main office geotech and structures, 20303 and 20601. So embankment in place and structure excavation. And it's going to be changing here really soon, where they're going to be, instead of 20601 tells you that the embankment's included in the bid price, that they're going to start paying for it separately. So if you grab the wrong spec, you could end up paying a contractor for 20303 when they shouldn't have been paid for 20303 because you grabbed the most recent one. So that's why you want to make sure that you're grabbing the right spec book and looking at it. It's great that they're online. You can go right to the pages that you're dealing with, either save them as a PDF so you can get to them quick or print them out. Proposal and special notes. Make sure you're checking all your special notes. Environmental notes. Environmental notes will bite you bad. So make sure you understand the stream restriction dates. Make sure that you understand what's required for your speedies permit. Then you get into standard sheets and baseline data. But just remember, there's an order of preference on stuff. The plans take the highest priority. And then if you see a discrepancy between two different things, that's when you're going to want to involve other people to find out which way they wanted it done. So that's just some of the stuff that's in the proposal, your special notes, your special specifications. You guys won't deal much with the fuel and asphalt and the prevailing wage rate stuff. That'll be done by somebody else, but you may be required to, do a wage rate interview where you go talk to somebody about that stuff. Make sure you're doing your method of measurement correctly, not going too detailed. If something's paid by the linear foot, there's no sense in spending the time out there measuring it to the 100th. It doesn't make a difference. We're paying to the linear foot, so make sure you understand that. So you have a limited amount of time every day, and you've got more work than you can get done in your day. So don't spend time measuring something super precise that doesn't need to be measured that precise. Understand those requirements and so you got your section 100. The beauty of being an inspector is 99 out of 100 times you're probably not going to deal with much in section 100. That's all the contractual stuff where we're dealing with major minor items, the bidding bonds on the insurance requirements, control of material, schedules. That's not mainly where you're going to be. This is going to be the part of the specs that you're going to spend most of your time. It's real, like I said, online is great because it's got it broken down now, so you can go right to the different sections. You're not going through a bunch of different pages, but you're going to spend your time in the 2 through 600, depending on what operation you're covering. But then most every item is going to kick you to section 700. And that's where you're going to figure out what's required for your basis of acceptance. And you need that stuff. Those of you that have worked with Site Manager know how bad you need that stuff because it asks you for every little thing. So know your section 700, what's needed. Just how the standard specs are laid out. Basis acceptance, construction details, method of measurement, basis of payment. Basis of payment is critical, especially on certain items that have where you don't pay the whole thing, and you want to make sure that you're working with your EIC on how they want that documented. Some of them do it different ways, so talk to your EIC how they want that done so that you're not paying 100% on something that we should be holding back until they finish up. Standard sheets, they're constantly changing, so I would, again, recommend not printing that stuff out unless it's on your specific job. Don't grab something from 3 jobs ago. It will have changed. Other resources, the engineer's estimate, that's a good one when you start looking through quantities and you're not sure how the designer, you can look through the engineer's estimate. It gives you a pretty good idea of how they were figuring things up. If you see that something, you feel like you're paying way more or not enough, or you have a big discrepancy between you and your foreman. Steel construction manual, that's going to give you some good details. So when you get into those specific type of operations, you're going to want to go into those different ones. One to really make sure that you're paying attention to is your demolition drawings and your erection drawings. Most of them are going to be stamped by a PE. They have to do them that way. If they said this crane is going to be here and they bring a different crane in, they don't get to do the operation. And that's your responsibility as an inspector, is to make sure that they're doing exactly the way they said they were on the demo plan or the erection drawing. Demo plans, you see it all the time. You get a set of demo plans and then a new iron worker comes out that worked for another contractor, or they did it a different way, and he starts doing something the way he did it on the previous job. Well, he may not understand that, this beam is in a different failure mode, or there's something else going on with this structure that you can't do it the way you did it on that one. That's why they have to submit it by a PE and they have to follow it. So if they're not following their demo plans or erection plans, you shut them down, get everybody together, figure out what needs to be done. Sometimes they have to send their erection drawings back to their PE to have their PE stamp that it's okay. It just depends on what it is. So make sure you're doing that. Talk to your EIC about record plans. Record plans are a great thing to work on on a rainy day. Get your quantities caught up, go work on your record plans, because you're going to be gone. EIC is going to be sitting there at its table and trying to figure out the record plans. Talked a little bit about the situational awareness. Know where you're standing. It's just a picture of a mirror. They were cutting, it jumped. If you're standing in the wrong place, erection drawings, demos, any of that, make sure you know where you're standing. Am I in a safe place? If you're not sure, ask a foreman. Say, hey, am I okay here? You want me someplace different? Am I impeding the vision of you to the crane operator? Talked a little bit about this with the laptops and that. You've got a lot of information that is available to you through Site Manager and through the DOT website. Make sure you're saving your files. Computers, our machines, they break, we drop them, they get water on them. So don't avoid saving things directly on your laptop. If you're in a position where, because of connectivity, you can't save any place other than your laptop, also bring a thumb drive so you got a duplicate spot where you have those files so you don't have to recreate those. Project-wise, you guys probably won't use that a ton, but there's a lot of design information that's in ProjectWise that you can go through and realize why a designer did something. As you go through your career, you're going to want to change some things that are happening on a project before you make those changes. Look through your design files, contact your designer, have a have a conversation. They may have done something. Some of the things we do, you stand there and say, why the hell are we doing it this way? Doesn't make any sense. And then you find out, well, it was because of this environmental permit or this local person that we were dealing with. We had to put this in the design. So don't just make a change because you think you've got a better idea. Understand the impacts of it. Just go through publications and guidance. Standard specs. It gives you the link there so you can go and find them. Shows the breakdown. There's some just little tricks of the trade of working with the electronic files to be able to find things. Makes it great. You know, put in a certain thing, you can click your way right down through until you find it. Bid results. The live bid opening is really tough. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. Sometimes it's really slow. We struggle with it. Bid tabulation, so you know quantities and bid prices and stuff like that. You can search for the plans and proposals. The questions answered during bidding, that last one, that's a really important thing. Go to your project, go online, look for that Q&A. You can go through and you can see some of the issues that the contractors were seeing when they were bidding the job, because they look at things differently than we do. So you can read what the questions were. You can see the answers we gave. So you have a little bit better idea of some of the things you might stumble upon. That's just showing that page. Another one of those things that, you know, you walk by that. I mean, there's a very high probability that somebody's going to end up electrocuted in that picture. Business intelligence, just know that that's there. You can get a lot of reports. Major items, sampling, testing. Approved list shows you can go to the approved list. Site manager also has information in it that you can get. Breakdown. Safety training. We should be doing weekly safety meetings in our offices. The contractors should be doing weekly tailgate meetings on theirs. If you can attend theirs, that's great. They should have a site-specific safety manual for your project. So if you're covering a new operation, something that you haven't done, you're not very familiar with, you should be reading their safety manual to know the things that they're supposed to be doing. It gives you a little bit more insight on some of the risks and dangers that are out there. So you've got that to look at. Work zone staff, traffic control. These are all changing. Had an accident, real bad accident last year. So a lot of the work zone standards are changing, especially for our short-term closures. You know, number of attenuator trucks, positioning of attenuator trucks, cone spacing, all of that stuff is changing. So you're going to want to be looking at those new standards. Yes, these are all changing. So let's see here. 4 main roles in the department. Eyes and ears for the department: conformance, verified document, and project safety. Communicate with your team. Communicate with the contractor. Communicate through your DWR. Caught up quick. Just about back on time, Adrian. So I don't know. A lot of information. A little bit tough listening to somebody talk for an hour.